There is one thing we've talked about a lot on this show for as long as we've been here, which is that we're not climate change deniers, but we think that many of those that push the renewables are the answer are people who are transition deniers. Transition deniers about what new technologies can do to replace old technologies and what ultimately Australia can do compared to the climate of the rest of the world. Remember, of course, we're 1% of the problem. But as activists have got behind privatised electricity boards, let alone the public sector ones as well, we've seen power station after power station that has simply been blown up. Why? Coal is bad. Can it be replaced by gas? No, not at all. The only thing is wind and solar, wind and solar, wind and solar, wind and solar. So as we've shown you with great detail, with great guests like Matt over the years and plenty of others, the only problem with this is that to replace what was the former infrastructure, you would need hundreds of thousands of brand new facilities all over the country, costing tens of billions of dollars. Remember, I was waving around a report from the CSIRO from 2017. The total cost of going from old grid to new grid, $1.4 trillion. So our argument has always been that the transition that seems to now be inevitable is being done too fast, and not because of science, but because of politics. Now, put simply, if you were trying to replace one glass of water with another glass of water, you would expect that it would be of exactly the same amount of water as the one that you are replacing. But you know and I know that's not happening. And even the University of New South Wales has reported exactly that today. Now, this did turn up on the ABC's website, but I'm pretty sure it ain't going to be headline news over there anytime soon. But Australia is adding green energy at less than half of the required rate to keep the grid stable. So what does that mean? Surprise, surprise. Blow up the stuff that works, replace it with the stuff that doesn't work as well. You're going to get your blackouts. You're going to get energy rationing. Now remember, transition has been my whole argument for the whole time that we have been here. Not about the need to, but the pace with which you do it. And remember, as the green activists want to electrify everything, from the kitchen stove to your car and all else in between, you need an even bigger grid than we have today because there'll be more things using the grid. Yet even after a decade of basically all of the money going into the renewable sector, it making the best part of, 40% of our grid right now, but the expectation of it getting in the next 6 and a bit years to 85%, we're not doing it either fast enough or well enough for the whole system to hold up right now. And again, one of the problems with this is because the people who have driven this policy change are people who live in the cities. They live in the cities and they have no expectation that a wind farm will replace their favourite swimming pool where they do laps. There's no plan to put solar farms in the middle of the parks that they walk their dogs. Instead, all of that can go off to regional Australia. But as we've shown you, my belief is that just like any other area in the country, people don't want their natural environment to change, especially people who left cities to go and live in places that didn't have lots of physical infrastructure like regional areas.
You'd nearly destroy the potato industry in this district.
We can't have anything over 3 or 4 metres under these massive power lines, which cuts out all of our machinery.
Factory will close because their jobs will go. The factory is relying on us for their production.
People come to this region, for the beautiful scenery, for the landscape, and they don't want to be looking at, 85-metre tall power lines.
Now, again, there may well be an internal audit in the ABC because a story has actually gone to air that shows exactly this problem. That despite the fact that people in the cities demand that anything but the cities be turned into renewable energy zones, the people who actually live in those places don't want it done. Put simply, yet again, to save the atmosphere, they will ruin the physical earth.
I think we have to have a national conversation that says, where are we prepared to put renewable energy? Are we prepared to put it around Uluru? Are we prepared to put it around the Great Barrier Reef, Ningaloo? What becomes important and sacred to us as a nation?
It's the way of the world. We've got to go to green energy, of course, and find better ways. But it's got to be done in a sustainable and eco-friendly way as well. You've got to have a fine balance between the two.
You can't do it at the expense of the environment itself. You can't destroy the environment.
Yes, a point we've been making for more than 10 years. But what about the response of the politicians who are the dog being wagged by the tail of progressive voters? Well, this is a minister in the Victorian government who's quite fine with a whole selection of offshore wind being put not that far from a national park.
I mean, we talk about visual amenity, and people have different views about what constitutes a benefit in terms of visual amenity and what may not be a benefit in terms of visual amenity.
Do you think anyone would see large turbines off a national park as a visual amenity benefit?
Well, I mean, the issue of it does not impact the national park.
You'd be able to very clearly see them from the prom.
Well, that's what some people will say.
Oh no, no, that's not. I'm not.
And at the end of the day,
it's not an opinion.
No.
It is fact that you will be able to see them.
Well,
from
with
the
some
prom.
of them, with some you may indeed.
So, Stiff, but what about a bit of pushback on Channel 2? I repeat, an internal investigation. How did that get to air? But it did. And even if the people who, particularly around that area, get what they want, which is for offshore wind to be pushed even further out to sea, the boss of the renewable project says that comes at a massive increased cost.
So the first thing is, the further out you go, the deeper the water is, and you can increase the cost materially.
So, there you go. The whole conversation about the transition. The transition that, even though everyone has got what they wanted on that side of the argument, is not good enough to maintain an electricity grid that is demanded more of every day by extra people and extra stuff being connected to it. Mark my words, this is the next stage of the fight, because the people who are going to have their landscapes changed will fight just as hard as the people who don't want theirs changed in the city.